Hola, Bernardo. It's Mr. J. I know I've been distracted a couple of days here, and I've gotten a little bit behind, as you can tell from this Canvas page, building the course out into the future. But make no mistake, I'm going to get caught up, I promise, on the content delivery. It's just I've been distracted a little bit by exam updates. The format of the exam is changing a little bit, and I just wanted to share with you the most recent information. I'm going to start posting these exam updates and review sessions right above your video lectures for the day, so that you're sure to include that as part of your to-do list for the assignments and activities moving forward. Okay, so let me walk you through what I found out about last night in a webinar that was hosted by Trevor Packer, who's the Assistant Vice President for College Board. Okay. I think it'll give us some reassurances about things we've already been doing, but kind of fine tune what we need to think about moving forward with this new exam. This PowerPoint's available, guys, there embedded on the Canvas page. It's also there as a Google Slides you can copy and edit if you want to, and then there's a PowerPoint PDF that you can look at or print if you want to. So you don't have to take any notes here. Just kind of listen as we go along through this and see what you think, okay? I kind of thought that we had everything squared away with the posts on College Board, but apparently there were some things that were a little confusing, and we got some more clarification last night. So I've kind of revamped my thinking about the Q1 prompt. That's the long essay question for Q1. And I've been able to eliminate some tasks and get down to what I think you'll be doing in the 25-minute time span. So going back to old prompts is kind of what we've done before. I'm going to do this again with you. The prompts will look familiar, but the idea is that you'll see what's been eliminated and what the new challenge will be. Okay, so this is the information that's on the College Board's website, right? And I just want to walk through that with you. From this, guys, we know that we're going to be comparing two works of art. First work is a required work, and it's part of the image set. Although an image of the work will be provided as part of the question prompt, there'll be no identifying information. A lot of us read this as though we were going to be identifying what was required, and that turns out not to be the case. I guess it makes sense because you guys will have your notes with you. This will be an open note exam, and what colleges really want to see is your analysis, which goes beyond just like recalling that information. So it makes a little more sense to me now. We go on to find on the website, the second work is selected by the student from a list of suggested works from the required image set, but with no images provided. Students may instead select a different work of art from any content area to compare with the required work. So that just spells out that ID is not really going to be a part of this thing, okay? So last night, the new information, they specifically indicated students will need to specify which work of art they choose for the second work. Notice they didn't say identify. They go on to say, however, detailed identification information such as artist, culture, date, etc., is not required, and points will not be granted for providing detailed identification information. They go on to specify what kinds of works you can choose from, and we've talked about this situation before. Let's see what they say. For the second work of art, student may choose any of one of the list of suggested works provided with the exam. B, any work from the course, right? So you would be able to use the works that we've taught from Content Area 8, for example, like Chairman Mao or Hokusai's The Great Wave. On C, any work that's relevant to the prompt, even if it's outside the 250 required works for the course. Now, basically, they've just opened up the barn door, right? You can choose anything as long as it's relevant to the prompt. But I really got to tell you guys, I'm going to stick in my instruction to part A, one of the list of suggested works provided with the exam. Okay, you'll probably have 2 or 3 options, and I'm fairly sure that these will come either from Content Area 2 through Content Area 6. I just want to remind you guys, do not ever choose something from Content Area 1, Global Prehistory, because we just can't qualify or quantify that historical information. We're going off of best guesses with Content Area 1. So focus your time on Content Area 2 through 6, okay? I would only go off the list in an emergency. If you're just not confident with the works that are on the list, then you might consider using something that you know really well from global contemporary or from China, Japan, or Korea. But the idea is that you just don't know if those works that you select are actually going to be able to get you all the rubric points. So again, I would just stick with the list. Okay. So they go on to say specifically what we're going to be doing here. This question assesses students' ability to do the following: use specific and relevant evidence to explain how the two works of art are similar and different in how they convey meaning. Wow, that is really nebulous and unspecific, right? That just lets me know right off the bat, guys, when they say convey meaning, that there's going to be a theme. There's going to be something that anchors our entire essay. We got to keep that in the back of our mind as we complete these individual tasks. Okay, so the part that's interesting to me there, similar and different, looks like we might have to do a little bit of both. All right. Use specific and relevant evidence to explain the meaning or significance of similarities and differences between the two works of art. That's just simply where you will provide significant evidence. Okay. So that's a lot of information. And for me last night, I was wrangling with the fact that this is going to look like, oh my God, a wholly different question. Not necessarily so. Okay, so I'm going to show you the old questions from AP exams. I'm going to break them down for you. Here's my best guess. Pardon the formatting here. I'm trying to annotate as I go here. I'm thinking we know this is going to be comparison. Okay, so if anybody out there is thinking about argumentation, like making an argument and providing evidence to support that argument, they haven't read the latest stuff from College Board. Okay, so you will be comparing two works. The time situation, you were supposed to have 35 minutes, but you guys know you're going to have 25. So I really think they're going to limit the number of tasks. I don't think you're going to have 8. I think you're really going to have 6, but they might throw you a curveball and create a rubric with 7 tasks. Obviously, you can't do in 25 minutes what you would have done in 35. So I think that's a fair guess to make, that you're basically going to have a reduced number of tasks. Considering the content that I've been following, guys, I've been emailing my friends. I've been talking about this on Facebook. I've been trying to figure this out, and not necessarily guess which works will show up, but guess what the skills are. And this is kind of how it shakes down. Okay, you'll have one of 2 possible breakdowns here. We already know this is going to be a thematic comparison, right? There's going to be an idea that exists between 2 works. And you're probably going to get 2 points for description of both of those works, but it'll be related to the theme. Points for explaining a similarity and a difference with VE, which is visual evidence, and or with CE, which is contextual evidence. I'm kind of leaving the door open on which way they can go, but I'll show you here more specifics. And then 2 points for explaining the evidence that supports either one of those similarities or one of those differences, where you'll have to use VE or CE. All right, 2, 2, 2. The thinking is, guys, identification is such an easy point. If it's going to be open note, that's probably why they got rid of it. They want to see you're thinking about the works. And remember, you'll have a picture probably of the required work, but not a picture of the work from the list. So the description is, being elevated a little bit, and that's why it's a bit more challenging. Explanation, you realize what that entails. So as long as you're looking at relevant comparisons between the 2 works and relevant evidence that supports that idea, then I think we're going to be okay. Now, the second idea that I've had, still a thematic comparison, 2 points for description of both works with VE. 1 point for explaining a similarity and or a difference with VECE. 1 point for explaining another similarity and or difference with VECE, and then backing up that specific similarity or difference. Okay, so probably best that I just show you what I'm thinking rather than tell you what I'm thinking, so it'll be a little bit more clear. Now, one warning, you guys are probably aware now there's a whole bunch of review videos on AP Central, and they're really, really good for content. They are not good for trying to understand the format of this new question. So I just want you to be aware. Now, the list is on College AP Central and on AP Classroom. So wherever you log in, wherever you see the student materials for AP Art History, you're going to see this list that has all these videos. They're from content area 9. They're from content area 10. What I think the skills that are tested are going to be valuable. The content will be helpful as a review, but I'm going to watch all of these for you and kind of give them a 4 or 5-star rating. You know, how focused are they on the exam? How good is the instruction regarding the actual skills you'll have to do? That way, you don't spend time watching all of them. In the chance that they may not be tested on the exam. So I'm going to do that for you later this weekend. If you know the YouTube channel, they all show up like this, right? So you might see my good friend John Gunnan or Allison Napier. These guys are facilitators and coordinators who really know their stuff. So this is great review. I just want the content to be helpful to you. So where I see content that maybe I haven't presented yet, or is actually really good for review, I'm going to post these for you. So you'll know that's definitely something you want to watch, okay? I guess I was confused by the prompts that showed up in some of these presentations where you get 2 points here, it looks like, for identification. Just realize that's not going to happen on the AP. I think they were doing it to kind of use these as a review in case you hadn't seen these works in a while, right? So if you're watching this and you got all your notes in front of you and you're starting, you're thinking about how to prep for the exam, that these are basic level things that wouldn't like scare you off of doing the analysis and the thinking you need to do. I'd also say this, guys, these videos probably were prepared before all of this COVID stuff got started. So kind of think they had these in the works and just couldn't change gear once they were already producing the videos themselves. Okay, so I assume the prompt was what we would see on the exam. I was totally wrong. So don't make that mistake and assume that what you're seeing in the videos is exactly what you'll see on the test. Okay. All right, Barron's even is not current. So watch yourself there. Those exam questions and writings from student samples, that's not what we'll see. So use them for content and information review only, not for insight into the format of the question. If you can just promise me that you'll do that, we'll move ahead. All right. Let me pause for just a second. Make sure I've got these things lined up correctly here. So we'll get into prompts here as soon as we come back from a short break. Bernardo's, welcome back. I've made some updates to my animations. I think that'll help us a little bit go through this sequentially. I want you to know that these are prompts that we've looked at before, so we're not going to take time to read every single one of them. We're just going to get the idea of how the old prompts can be changed for the new prompt in this exam. So we'll add this to what we know from College Board. Let me get the PowerPoint set up here, get rid of my face, and we are off and running. So all right, the first year that we had this new exam was 2016, and the very first question that we saw was about man and nature. So take a second and look this over. Work shown as Fan Quan, so we were given that work, and then we had a whole list of other works that also featured relationships between man and nature at the bottom. You basically had to discuss, using visual and contextual evidence, similarities and differences, and how they present or created a relationship between humans and the natural world. When we got the rubric, it was a 7-point rubric with 1 point for ID. 2 points were describing the relationship between man and nature in the required work as well as the selected work. Then you had to describe a similarity. Then you had to describe a difference. Then you had to provide evidence. Visual evidence first, then contextual evidence after that. I want to take a look at that rubric with you. If we wipe out the ID point, then basically what we have is a 6-point rubric, and we can just see if any like shapes emerge. You guys remember we blocked these prompts out in the fall as we got ready to write that timed writing on the tradition of the female nude from the Renoir show. And what we started off with was identifying the theme. So I guess the theme here would be man and nature, right? First thing now, since we're not doing ID, would be to describe the relationship between man and nature and the required work. That's what that RW means. Then we have to describe the relationship between man and nature in our selected work, which I want to remind you, really, you want to stick to the list, okay? All of those works that are there for you have been vetted, and they will actually earn you all the points that are part of the rubric. So this is my little icon that we came up with basically for similarity, right? Where you're talking about both works. That's what the arrow represents. The arrows represent, basically talking similarly about whatever that idea is in the middle. Okay. Now, for this first year, we didn't have to provide evidence at this point. So all you had to do was do that appropriately and make it relevant to the theme of man and nature. Okay. Then we had to talk about a difference between the two works and how they addressed that theme. Then it was time to provide the evidence. Okay, so we had to select a similarity or difference first, and then provide evidence from each of those works in order to get the full point. Same thing again with contextual evidence. So let me put those things here to remind you. First, we were doing it with visual. Next, we were doing it with contextual. This is a pretty elaborate prompt. So removing the ID doesn't really help us that much. That's a lot to do. This was the very first essay out of the gate, so I'm not sure that this will be a format that you'll see on the exam, but I'm going to keep it in the back of my mind and write some prompts for you that kind of do this the same way, okay? The next year, we saw a shift away from all of those separate tasks to something that was a little more streamlined. It was still a 7-point prompt, but you're going to see that some of the task points are related to each other so that you don't have to do them over and over and over again. If we look at this a little closely, let's get rid of that ID point. Okay, let's relabel our task points. Now we have 6 points total. We're ready to kind of block this out together. All right, our theme for this one, it went by pretty quickly, was about devotional objects and how they're supposed to function, right? Specifically, devotional objects that feature the Virgin Mary. So we had to describe the Theotokos, which was the required work, and then select another image of Mary, basically, and describe how she's depicted. So that's going to probably be the first thing you have to do is describe those two different works. You're going to have to use visual evidence as you do it. So you can see the evidence started working its way up into the earlier task points, didn't it? So rather than waiting to the end, now you do this kind of as you go. Here we had a difference between the two Marys. And here we had a difference between how the icon's supposed to be used, how it functions. So we had two differences, but they were about different aspects of the artwork. So you might have a situation like that where you're talking about a lot of differences. To earn the last 2 points, we had to provide evidence from the required work and then also the selected work. And we had to use contextual evidence, right? So you can see how the evidence worked its way into those key steps, but you might see something like this. The next year, we saw a similar kind of challenge where we had an 8-point rubric this time, and things were a little bit more spread out. Now, this is about the battle scene of the great altar of Zeus and Athena, and then another scene that showed a battle or conflict. So let's break this one down. I'm thinking if it's going to be a 6-point rubric, guys, obviously we're going to get rid of the ID point. But where you see a duplication of like a task or a skill, I think that's probably what's likely to go away. Now, if it's a 7-point rubric, I think that's the one that's going to get added back to our list. So I don't know how that's going to fall. You just need to read your prompt really carefully and see how many task points you have. If I'm sticking to my 6-point rule, though, here, it kind of breaks down like this, where 8 turns into 6, and now we can block this out. So step 1, got to know our theme, got to know what this is about, battles or conflicts and what they convey. So now we're going to describe the required work, which is the altar of Zeus and Athena here. Then we have to describe the selected work, right? We're going to use VE. Now, guys, here they talked about subject matter in the prompt specifically. I don't know if you caught that. That's content, right? So we probably need to remind ourselves that, yeah, it's visual evidence, but it's got to be specifically about subject matter in order to earn the point. All right. So watch for those qualifiers that tell you right now we're talking about content. In a minute, we'll talk about form. They do that to you a lot. Okay. T3 was all about either a similarity or a difference. So you guys can see I left the arrows going in both directions. You just had to pick which one you wanted to address. And that was done with how. That word that you're seeing there, how the imagery depicts the battle or conflict, that kind of indicates to me they really wanted you to talk about form. So I put a note to myself here on this blocking that first it's subject matter, then it's form, how it was arranged, and how the battle is depicted. Next thing was to pick a similarity between the two works and then provide some evidence. So that's where the points will probably break down. So it's basically the same creature now, like in the third year, you're seeing sometimes you're going to be talking about a description. Sometimes you're explaining a similarity or a difference. Sometimes you have to do a similarity or difference and back it up with evidence. So I'm kind of seeing a pattern that I think might repeat again. Okay. Here's last year's prompt, the Augusta Suprema Porta. And most people wrote about George Washington out of that list. It was all about symbolism that indicated political power and authority. So you could see this going any numbers of ways. Let's take out the extra points that are not likely to be part of our 2020 prompt, relabel the points, total them up. And what you get is basically the same kind of format, okay? Now here, the visual evidence had to be about symbolic content, right? So you wanted to pick the symbols and imagery out of the prompt that would qualify for these first two descriptions. So just realize there's always going to be a hook. You can't just describe the artworks, loosely. They're always going to be tied to the theme. And since the theme is symbolic imagery, this kind of makes sense that would be the case there. Okay. All right. Similarity was next. And you had to talk about form here. I'm assuming a lot there with that one word how, that's what they intended. But think of this as like scaffolded from easy peasy to really, really challenging. And I think you can see talking about content is a little easier than talking about form. All right, next was the difference, and then the evidence you had to provide. And for this evidence, they kind of opened the gate a little bit and let you talk about VE or CE, whichever you thought was most important. All right, so by the fourth year of all of these exams, guys, we're really seeing this kind of break down in a predictable fashion. And I think this would be the year for them to just follow what we've done. So I kind of think that these will be the formats that you see. Now, it's really up to you guys to figure out what the format is. Is it going to be similarities? Is it going to be differences? What kind of evidence are they going to ask for at each step? But at least now you're reminded of the skills that we've been kind of working on all year. Even though we don't know the actual format of the final prompt and rubric, we do know the skills that we'll have to complete in order to get full credit. And guess what? These are the skills we've been working on all year long. Even though you've been writing like 5 rubric prompts, 5-point prompts, you've been writing timed writings that look a little bit different. All of the skills that make up those things are basically the same things that we've been seeing all year long. Okay. So I don't want you to feel like you're learning something brand new, like it's completely a situation where they pulled the rug out from under you. These are the things we've been working on together all year long. And I just want you to realize you've already got a leg up on the competition. Okay. All right. So in the upcoming classes, guys, I'm going to provide you with some exam review sessions. I'm going to just leave that information ahead of your to-do list for the day, and I'll probably do that twice a week, okay, getting us ready for this test. I have written some prompts, and I will include them in this fashion. I found out just last night that the ID basically is going to not be part of this, so I got to go back and rework this, but I just want to show you what we're going to do together. We're going to go through and mark all of our prompts, right? Attack this and basically break it down. And we'll use my examples to do that. We will do everything that we would have done face-to-face in these review sessions and really break it down so none of this is a surprise, all right? So you can see in those sessions later on, you're going to get the chance to see how I might break this down and labeling the task points. I'm even going to help you guys as we go through this, block it out. If you're ready to write about it, then we'll do exactly the same shapes that you're familiar with. Now, since I just found out new information last night, I'm going to have to go back and change some of this stuff up a little bit. But this is what I expect doing with you later on next week. Okay. So do make sure you're following me on all of those review sessions, because they are vitally important to your success on the AP. I'll be assigning a couple of blocking activities, a couple of brainstorming activities, but they'll be part of your homework. So it'll be easy to find when those things pop up. But I just want you to be aware of everything that we're going to try and do together in the review sessions. Okay. I will leave it there for now and basically get back to actually teaching the content, because that's also something that we have to do. But I hope you guys feel better about what you're going to see on this test. It's going to be fairly predictable. It's going to be like what you've seen in the past, and it's going to be like what you've been working on all year long. So I hope that helps you feel a little more confident, and I want you to have a fantastic weekend. All right. We will see you later, guys.